2, 3, 4. Let me tell you about PuckPedia, stats, contracts, and caps. It's all there for you. One-stop shop for your hockey information. It's a hockey sensation. So log on, log on, log on. If you give a puck, go to PuckPedia.com.
Welcome to episode 13 of the PuckPedia Hockey Show. Today we welcome on Pete Blackburn, NHL media personality, co-host of What Chaos with DJ Bean. Recently their show moved over to the Nation Network and Daily Faceoff. So we talk about Pete's show. I think they're in their third season now. So we talk about what that's been like and what the new move has meant for him and the show. He also was featured in the Amazon NHL Faceoff series. So we talk a little bit about his favorite part, being a part of that whole thing, narrating all the big moments of the NHL season last year. Then we dive into his Boston Bruins. Pete's a big Bruins guy from Boston. So we talk about their team, how their salary cap picture looks, what some pending free agents they have, and what moves they might make to help them rebuild or retool for the future. And then we talk about some other interesting storylines in the NHL. The Utah Mammoth are one that are 8-2 right now. Pittsburgh Penguins are 7-2-1. We talk about a bunch of different things on that side. And then we wrap it up talking about the NHL Frozen Frenzy that is tonight. And then Pete gives us his Stanley Cup picks. But without further ado, let's drop the puck. We now welcome on a very special guest, dare I say, friend of the program. It's Pete Blackburn from What Chaos. Pete, how's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for hopping on. I'm super excited. We have a lot to go on. We're about 10 games into the NHL season this year. A lot happening. But kind of before we get into that, kind of want to talk about you a little bit, your background, and also what Chaos just had a big move going from All City to the Nation Network, which is also a part of Daily Faceoff. So we kind of love to just talk about a little bit because I know before, like you were doing the What Chaos every single day, you were doing a bunch of other sports. Like you weren't necessarily singularly focused on hockey. So how did you kind of transition working with DJ and kind of getting super focused on hockey?
Yeah, the goal was always to be singularly focused on hockey, but kind of had to like backdoor my way into that in a way, and I think that's kind of been like the story of my career as a whole is that like I found some like non-traditional routes to go. Like early on in Twitter, like I was able to build a following by clipping games and posting highlights and stuff, and it kind of like Trojan horse my way into the media in a way, and it worked out. But yeah, I mean, I ended up being lucky enough to get hired by places who didn't really have a super strong NHL presence in terms of the way that they were covering the league. Like I'm talking about CBS Sports, Fox Sports. When I was hired to write for them, there was like a big gap in their hockey coverage, and so being a huge hockey person, it gave me the opportunity to say, like, you don't have to pay me any extra, but I will pick this stuff up because it's what I'm interested in. And the end goal was always to end up kind of where we're at right now, which is like I'm only covering the league and doing it in a way that's like fun and kind of authentic to myself, which is like first and foremost, I'm a fan. Like I'm not like a media person. I'm not a journalist. I'm a hockey fan. I wear that on my sleeve. Like I'm a big Bruins guy, but I watch and talk about hockey the way that like I normally would outside of 9 to 5 business hours or whatever. And I think that is a big part of our show and what we do is that like we approach it in a way that is fun and conversational and the way that you would talk about the game with your friends. And so it's an incredible space to be, an incredible place to be. It's literally my dream job right now. So very, 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 very lucky to continue doing it for the Nation Network.
Yeah, and I'm happy for you that it kind of all worked out and you got yourself into a position where you landed on sort of your end goal. And then to your point too, like I think what you and DJ do is super interesting. And I was listening the other day where he's like, this isn't the show you listen to get the most thorough analysis of hockey, right? There's a lot of different lanes that you can go to. Like if you want to listen to that, like you're going to 32 Thoughts is probably the most one. But you also have Chicklets who are like the guys who are more like locker room talk guys. And then you have the other Daily Faceoff show, like Merrick kind of is getting a little more serious with the sheet or the morning cup of hockey guys in the morning. And then you and DJ are kind of like this fun, kind of quirky almost show, but you get on good guests. You have the cool Pro Shop Wars. Like you're having interviews with Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith's interviewer Judy the other day. So like there's a lot of different things that you guys do that keep the game fun and interesting, but isn't necessarily the deep dive that like maybe this kind of show gets into a little bit as we're having on like agents and executives. But like we want to have, media personalities too on that talk about the game in a fun way.
Yeah, and like there are a lot of things that I don't like about like where media is at right now, but one of the things that I do like about where media is at, and it's kind of like from a content creation perspective too, is like there is nothing that is too small or insignificant or ridiculous to where it doesn't need coverage. If it's something that you're interested in, you're passionate about, and you've got, a microphone or podcast equipment or a camera or whatever, like you can make that content. And if there is an appetite for it and you're good enough at doing it, it will be consumed. And that's like a big part of the reason that we ended up going to the Nation Network is like their lineup of shows is awesome already, but it provides a wide range of ways to cover the league. Like, you talk about Merrick, like his insight and his sort of historical intelligence and his like wide ranging depth of knowledge about hockey is fascinating. I can listen to that guy tell stories all day long. And, if I want to listen to an idiot like Johnny Laz first thing in the morning, I
Big
can do that
idiot.
too. And he's a big idiot, but I love him. And I love him. And he reminds me a lot of myself as a big idiot. So, like there's DFO Live gives you like plenty of information and just like very straight to the point coverage of the game. And we as a podcast fit into a place that is not being taken up right now, which is like we're a super ridiculous show that will cover stories that normally you would think nobody really cares about. But if you find a way to make people care about them, like we did 2 weeks on the Zamboni driver from the Red Wings getting fired for pissing in a drain, and it was the most fun 2 weeks in show history, in my opinion. So it like the Judy Jupiter story that we did last week, where she films Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. We had her on the show. Like there's nothing that's too ridiculous for us to cover, and that's a really fun part of the show.
Yeah, and I think like complementing that with the stuff that you're kind of posting on Twitter or X as well is like really kind of what has set yourself apart. Like Seth, if you can pull up the clip that he posted yesterday about Charlie McAvoy, just like absolutely just drilling a water bottle and all of it's going all over his jersey and almost none of it is going into his mouth. And you just say the beautiful game, like stuff like that is just where you keep hockey like fun, entertaining, but it's also like, immersing yourself into the game itself.
Yeah, it's funny because like stuff like that is the origin story of the podcast itself. Because I've been doing the beautiful game, like that series of crap, which is just ridiculous moments in hockey that highlights how insane and chaotic hockey can be. And I've been doing that for like 10 years at this point. And like the spirit of the podcast, I wanted to kind of mirror that, which is let's treat hockey seriously and kind of be passionate about how big of fans we are, but also let's highlight how absolutely ridiculous the sport is and how insane things can get at points. And luckily over the past like 3 years, there has been no shortage of like ridiculous content for us to cover. And hopefully that continues because we're having a ton of fun.
Yeah, and it looks like a similar lane you took, like with another like Boston person that we're a mutual friend of, Jared Carabas. Like he's kind of made his lane right in like the baseball is dead sphere. Like obviously, I worked with him at DraftKings, but then he's now been at Underdog Barstool to start it off. Like you're kind of similar to you with the hockey stuff. Like you're going to All City and now you're at Nation, and who knows what's kind of next for you. But the way you're kind of approaching it is really getting yourself like involved in the game, and then you ended up doing the Amazon series where you're narrating like that, and that's super cool. Like maybe give us a little bit of taste of like what that was like, and what maybe your all the episodes that came out, what was your favorite part of last season to talk about on that series?
I wouldn't say it was my favorite part to talk about, obviously, because of the subject matter, but like the Johnny Gaudreau episode and how they covered Columbus and Johnny himself. I was like very, very proud of being part of that episode and telling that story because I think they did such a good job. And it would have been so easy for that show and the showrunner Daniel Amagon to like get it wrong and have it be really unpalatable or like feel, whether you want to say, I don't know, like exploitative or whatever the hell that word is to Johnny Laz. I'm an idiot. Like it would just feel wrong or feel a little bit icky, and they did such a good job of telling the story and doing it justice. And so I was very, very proud to be part of that. But on the bigger whole, like very, very proud to be part of that production. And I don't know how the hell it ended up happening, because when you look at the people who were involved in that show, it's like, Paul Bissonnette, Sarah Nurse, Jackie Redmond, like all these like heavy hitters in hockey. And then there's just me. And and I know that like I've gotten plenty of feedback that's like, why the hell is this kid in the show? And I don't have an answer for you. Like I think that they just like the podcast and they put me on because of it. But it's an honor and very, very cool experience.
Yeah, I think you're selling yourself short a little bit too. And also too, like if we're talking about idiots on there, like if they got Biz on there too, like he's the biggest idiot of them all. But
Biz is the biggest idiot of them all, but he played like he was a former
yeah,
NHLer. He's very, very good at breaking down the game in a way that like even the biggest idiots can chew on it and find it entertaining. And it kind of bridges that gap. And I think that's a good place to be, and sports needs more of those people that can do both.
definitely, and it's been I think refreshing. Like NHL, like new age media has kind of taken its foothold down now, and I think you're starting to see more and more shows of your ilk kind of making its waves out there. But yeah, that's all great. Let's dive into maybe a couple different things on the NHL this season. So let's first start with your Boston Bruins, right? A team that there weren't many expectations going into the season. They're currently 4-7. They're unfortunately last place in the Eastern Conference right now based on points and games played. If you want to take a look at their lineup here, if we go to puckpedia.com, we'll see that the Bruins have about $860,000 in cap space right now, projected at the trade deadline 3.49 million. Although they're not going to probably be buyers, they're more going to be sellers. They only really have a couple of notable free agents this year. I think you guys mentioned on your show, Victor Arvidsson is going to be a guy who's 100% going to get sold at the trade deadline for assets. You have Peak as well as like their other kind of big UFA. And then Pavel Zacha is a guy who's been talked about a lot in trade rumors, specifically to the Vancouver Canucks. He's only 4.75 million on the salary cap. He has another year after this season on his deal, but he's flexible because he can play both the wing and the center position. Then you got like the Bruins are an interesting team because it's going to be hard for them to fully tank when you have guys like Pasternak, McAvoy, and Swayman signed to these long-term deals. So I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are just on not only the team this year, but like the future and where you kind of think the Bruins are heading long term.
Yeah, the team this year, I think that it very much feels like a bridge year. Like it feels like a let's, figure out maybe what we have in certain places and adjust based off of that. But I don't think there's any real expectations for this team to, compete or be taken seriously this season. And, you know, I think with the exception of Monday night's game against the Senators, what you've seen has been, there's been positives in it, because this team has certainly not been perfect, certainly not been a serious contender or whatever you want to just label them as, but they've competed and the effort level has been there and it's been an entertaining product. And from a fan side, that's that's a step in the right direction, because last year's team was not only not good, it was unwatchable. The product was so bad, and the effort level on any given night was left a lot to be desired. So let's hope that there's not a lot more nights like Mondays against Ottawa, because they just laid a complete egg. But the compete levels there, I feel good about where they're kind of headed with Marco Sturm, and the way that he's implementing a culture and a system there. And again, like the early returns have been positive and negative in a lot of directions. Like they need a lot of work defensively, but right now I'm not going to overreact. I just think that this is a team that will probably finish towards the bottom of the league, but as long as the effort's there, as long as the compete is there, it's something to build on.
Yeah, and I think Marco Sturm is a good coach, right? And he's not been given the best roster in the first year to kind of manage that, but he's a former player of this organization. Like he knows, let's say, the quote unquote Bruin way. And so give him a little bit of a runway. Let's see kind of what he can do in the Bruins organization. They also have a bunch of draft picks, right? They have 2 first-round picks in 2026. They also have 2 first-round picks coming in 2027. So a lot of assets at their disposal to either make those draft picks and develop those players, or use those draft picks as bait to kind of get some maybe younger players on other teams that want the draft pick compensation back in return. So we'll see kind of what happens. But to your point, too, like Pasta's still an elite winger, right? He just signed a long-term deal. He has 13 points in 11 games. So it's hard for the Bruins to really like strip it down, as teams like the Blackhawks and Sharks have done in the past, where they were totally devoid of talent before they ended up drafting, their first and second overall picks.
Yeah, and I think that's the big decision that they're gonna have to make in the next, like, few years is, do they have enough in terms of bones to not do a full-on tear down and just kind of rebuild on the fly? Because you mentioned, like, Pastrnak, McAvoy, Swayman, those are, like, their big pillars in the front, back, and
Lindholm
net.
too, if you wanna put him in the
Right.
mix as
If he
well.
can stay healthy, but, like, you got Hagen's on the way, like, obviously, they have a major need down the middle to have, like, a franchise center, and, like, you talk about the assets they have that they can turn into ready now talent, and via free agency, they will have the ability to spend if they want to, and if they spend appropriately and smartly, that's the big question, but, like, again, I think it's gonna come down to, in the next couple of years, do you see enough with this current group and its pillars to push you forward, or are you going to have to pivot and maybe sell off a Pastrnak, a McAvoy, a Swayman, see what you can get for them, and then just strip this thing down to the studs and transition into a new era?
Yeah, with those deals too, it's difficult. I mean, it's going to be a lot easier, I would say, in the current NHL with the salary cap rising so much that every team pretty much now has cap space or will have cap space in the next year or two to be able to take on those contracts, even if Boston decides they want to have some retention on those deals. And a lot of these guys have pretty strong trade protections in those deals. So it has to be like a kind of management and players camp agreement to kind of make those decisions.
Yeah, and to a positive there is that none of the deals, like even their quote unquote bad contracts, are not immovable contracts. So, like with the exception of the protections that may hamper their ability to move them. But like nobody on this roster is right now, at least, is making an unjustifiable amount of money or a prohibitive amount of money to prevent them from being dealt at some point. Like everything, especially with the cap going up, everything seems to be in a fairly okay realm.
Totally agree. Let's snap it around the NHL a little bit. There's I would say there's a lot of interesting storylines that have kind of taken place so far, and I would say interesting in terms of like there's a lot of teams that are doing well that you might not have expected them to do so well to start the year. You look at a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins, 7-2-1, second in the Metropolitan Division. You look at a team like the Seattle Kraken, second in their division. Utah's 8-2. The Devils are on an 8-game win streak right now. The Atlantic right now reads 1, 2, and 3. The Montreal Canadiens, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Ottawa Senators. So I think there's just a lot of teams you wouldn't expect to be towards the top. Any direction you want to take it here, P? Like I know the Montreal Canadiens are probably one of the most fun teams to watch. It must be killing you as a Bruins fan to say that.
Yeah, honestly, the last couple of years have been kind of a fight for my life with the Bruins sucking and being unwatchable. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Canadians being like this unbelievably electric team. And even if they're not there yet, they're not ready to be a true Stanley Cup contender, you can project the future of that team and feel like they're gonna be there at some point. And at the very least, they're a playoff team right now ahead of schedule. So fun. And I hate it. I need the Bruins to be like I've been begging the Bruins and the Canadians to be good at the same time for years at this point. And as soon as the Canadians get good, they immediately flip. So it's frustrating. I love watching the Canadians. I feel like the direction that I want to go here though is Utah because it Utah is awesome. And like I expected them to be in the mix this year, but the jump that they've made pretty quickly right out of the gate this season has been awesome. And the Cooley Gunther line is Paterka is unbelievable. I think one of the best lines in hockey. And I'm very, very excited to see how they develop over an 82 game season, but just an incredibly dynamic offensive line that can produce all over the place. So Utah is going to be very, very fun to watch. Keep an eye on. They've got a ton of momentum right now. And, obviously there was excitement with their inaugural season, but they didn't really have it all put together. We're talking year 2 here, and the momentum behind that franchise, both on and off the ice, is just incredible. And I think a really, really cool story to monitor. In the opposite direction, like the Penguins have had a great start. I feel like I'm in a massive camp just waiting for the bottom to fall out or at least just fall back to earth because this cannot sustain, right?
They were the only sellers in the offseason, right? And you look at the second line of Malkin, Mantha, and Brazeau. And these guys are on like 45, 50 goal paces on the season. Malkin's tied for the league in points. He's first in the NHL in assists this year. So, and he's 39 years old. He's rewinding the clock back. They're the only teams that was basically saying, we will sell any part of our team. We're looking towards the future. This is our plan. And then Crosby said, no, absolutely not. You got this infusion of talent with Ben Kindle, who was drafted in the first round this past year, and the other defenseman on the back end. Dan Muse, first time head coach. Coming from the Rangers organization. Maybe they were saying, I think I was listening to 32 Thoughts today, and they're saying because Muse is like a newer guy as opposed to the Penguins hiring someone like a Rick Tocchet or a John Tortorella, that maybe that Crosby actually has like a different take on it than if it was someone who's been established and around the league. And maybe that's been helpful, kind of bringing that in and them working together with Dubas to put this team on track. But in no scenario right now should the Penguins be as good as they are.
No, and like at some point you got to wonder too, like are guys like specifically Malkin is like is he playing so well that it's going to screw this team at some point in the year? Like, are they going to be in a position around the trade deadline where like
They might have to add.
yeah, or like like they're not selling. Everybody was
Right.
expecting them to like, where's Malkin going to go?
Right. Rust, Ricard, Raquel, like all these
Yeah,
guys are already gone.
and Malkin is so good in the early going here that the Penguins are winning games and his value is high. And if this keeps up, you can't sell him. Like how are you going to sell that to Sidney Crosby if you want him to stay?
Right.
Is we finally got things back on track. Oh, we're gonna trade your longtime running partner because his value is high right now. I feel like that would be a very hard sell to Sidney Crosby. And so this this was I was projecting the Penguins to be one of the bleakest teams in the NHL this season, and I was gonna be watching through my closed fingers. But now it's fully intriguing in a number of different directions about whether it's sustainable, what they pivot to, how they manage this situation, and if they do add and like what they can actually be. I'm not buying any stock on the Pittsburgh Penguins 10 games into the season, but I am much more fascinated in them.
I think they're also getting really good goaltending, which is part of it as well. Like no one expected Tristan Jarry and Seelovs to be top 10 in goals saved above expected per 60 to start the season, and they both are up there. And so I think that's definitely helping it. But to your point too, like this roster just is barren of like talent after their high end players.
I did not like the way that the Vancouver Canucks handled their goaltending situation over this past year. Like Shelov's was like I know that he had his struggles, but when he came in the playoffs
He was
and was
good.
an absolute dog for them and then tore it up in the AHL in the Calder run, like there was a lot to believe in with that guy, and for them to extend Lankinen and also Demko, who can't stay healthy. Like obviously, Thatcher Demko is a really, really good goaltender when he is healthy, but that is a big if when it comes to Thatcher Demko. So moving off of Shelovs, I wasn't crazy about it, but good on the Penguins for jumping all over that and getting some good early returns.
Yeah, maybe that's actually a good segue here too, because we have the Olympics coming up, and Thatcher Demko is a guy who's he's a USA-born player, and he's healthy right now. He's playing super, super well. I think he's top six maybe in goals saved above expected per 60 to start the season. He's got Vancouver off to a pretty solid start. Like for me, when we're looking at some of these players this year, like in terms of them trying to make that Olympic push, is there anyone kind of besides the locks and the obvious players? Is there anyone that's kind of you're pushing for a spot? I know Frank Saravelli was talking yesterday with Craig Button that Lane Hudson should be on the team over Adam Fox. You have the third goaltending position that for USA that could go between Jeremy Swayman, but then you have Thatcher Demko. You have Joey Decourt, I think also is like a couple different nationalities, but I think he declared American and he's got the Kraken off to a really good start. On the Canada side of things too, like there's a couple defense spots up for grabs. Some of those forward spots could have went a bunch of different directions. I know Nick Suzuki's name gets brought up a lot. Like anything kind of catching your eye on the Olympics take. I know I'm excited for that coming February.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Caulfield is a guy that I think absolutely has to be on USA based off of his knack for scoring big goals and like elevating in certain moments. And they clearly lacked that at Four Nations. Guys who, kind of disappeared in the biggest moments, especially in that forward group. They need that pop up front. So I would put Cole Caulfield on the team. And you mentioned a number of guys in net. one name that hasn't come up and didn't come up in the invite list is Dustin Wolf. Like Dustin Wolf not being no disrespect to Joey Decord or Thatcher Demko by any means, great goaltenders. But like, if we are running down the list of really good American goaltenders right now, I'm putting Dustin Wolf above Decord. I'm putting him above Demko. I'm putting him above Swayman. Like right now, I think that Dustin Wolf should be a top 3 American goaltender based off of his body work in Calgary. And like, I know he hasn't had the best start to this season, but Calgary stinks and he is keeping them in games when they cannot score goals. So I would absolutely at least have given him a look. And then outside of the USA spectrum, like Macklin Celebrini right now, I know there's a lot of chatter about his place on Team Canada and whether or not he'll be involved, but like it's hard to ignore how good he is already and how he's elevating
15
guys
points in
around him.
9 games.
Yeah, on like one of the worst teams in the league. So there's a lot of interesting roster decisions that are going to come down in the next, month and a half. But yeah, I'd keep an eye on those ones for sure.
Macklin's also over 50% in the faceoff dot too, which I think is a totally underlooked asset of like his gameplay as well. Like he's obviously dynamic offensively, but if he's winning over 50% of his faceoffs, that's immensely valuable in these kinds of tournaments.
Before we move off Macklin, I last thing I want to say on that too is that like even if you don't think that Macklin Celebrini is going to be a huge part of this Olympic team, how much do you put value in involving him in this Olympic team to take experience from a guy like Crosby, Marchand, whoever you want to name, these guys who have waited so long and this may be their last kick at the can in the Olympics? How much do you want him to pull from those guys in this experience for their 4 years down the line? Like, I think that can't be overlooked too.
That's a good point. Like he's obviously the future of Canada. Like no offense to Connor Bedard, but it seems like Macklin Celebrini is kind of the future 1C of Canada, at least right now. So I think that's a good point. Is like maybe he's the 13th forward, but bringing him along for that experience would be valuable. Another young defenseman I want to talk about for possibly Canada, Matthew Schaefer. So first overall pick for the Islanders. I mean, this guy is coming to the league and he's just taking it by storm. Right now, he's averaging over 23 minutes per game. That's 2 minutes more than any single player, any skater on the Islanders right now. Most by the defenseman by far. He has 7 points in 8 games, 2 goals, 1 game-winning goal. I mean, this guy is just—he's a great story for the Islanders this year.
Yeah, he is. And like as far as the Olympic conversation goes, I probably wouldn't. He's just so young,
I know.
and that's a entirely different arena and amount of pressure. But and like when you look at Canada's defense, they've got a good group there. It would be tough for him to crack.
But the fact that he's in the conversation right now is
Right.
everything you need to know.
Yeah, and like even with the expectations of a number 1 pick and all the hype that was attached to him, like he's still impressing above what you would expect. And that's got to make Islanders fans feel super great. And I love what they're building there. Like I really like their prospect pool and the direction that they're headed, especially for a team that has been, I don't want to say like underwhelming because they've had so much success with that core group, but it hasn't been overly exciting. And the way that they operate is just like in as a cohesive unit, as at their best, like they operate as a cohesive unit and they roll 4 lines and it's not defined by any 1 or 2 stars. And Schaefer is that star and like that guy that can define that franchise. And they've got a number of other really, really impressive young players coming along the way too. So, yeah, Schaefer, he just seems like a great kid and an unbelievable player. And it's very, very cool to see him immediately step in and have such an impact because it wasn't that long ago when people looked at young defensemen and they were like, oh, 200 games before you can evaluate them and really determine what they'll be. That is certainly not the case anymore. When you look at like a Lane Hudson or a Schaefer, these guys can come in immediately and change the trajectory of a team.
Yeah, Cale Makar came in right in the playoffs and scored a big goal like almost immediately. But to your point about the Islanders, I'm a big fan of what they're building. I think Matthew Darsh is a really, really strong, forward-thinking GM. He brought over Ryan Bonus as an assistant GM, and then you look at some of the draft picks that they made with the Noah Dobson deal. Like Aitchison and Eklund were both viewed as really good value picks. They got Cal Ritchie in the Brock Nelson deal, and then they also, when in the trade, got Emil Heineman, who looks like a really good piece of that lineup as well. So I like what the Islanders are definitely building.
Cole Iserman as well. Like Cole Iserman, I feel like is going to be Corey Perry light for a long time. Like he just scores big goals, is such a pain in the ass, and like such a little shit that like I love Cole Iserman. I think he's going to be a really good player.
You also love Corey Perry, as you were the first person to
Yeah,
purchase a Kings Corey Perry jersey.
correct.
Fun fact.
Yeah, and like God, I never would have expected to be a Corey Perry guy when I was like coming up and like a young fan. I hated him just like everybody else did because of just how annoying and like ratty he is. But at some point, you have to respect the longevity and the way that he's kind of been able to reinvent himself and keep his career going.
100%. He's annoying unless he's on your team, and then you kind of love him for all the bullshit that he does, similar to a Brad Marchand as a Bruins fan all that time. Cool. Before we wrap up here, Pete, I did want to touch on the Frozen Frenzy is tonight on ESPN. There seems to be a lot of mixed reviews online in terms of how the NHL has marketed this Frozen Frenzy. A lot of people were surprised that it was today. It's also on a random Tuesday in October. Going head to head against the World Series. And also, the concept is interesting because it's kind of trying to emulate what Red Zone does, but the staggered starts almost make that hard in the beginning to really, you're not getting many games going on until like 7:30. So, like from 6 to 7, it's kind of weird. And talking to people over at ESPN, this is basically the only time that they're able to do it with all their contractual obligations to all their different sports leagues. So, it's like this day or never. I just want to get your thoughts on like the whole concept of the Frozen Frenzy and like what you think about it.
Yeah, like the concept I like. Anything that kind of just like is a fun thing that can maybe draw in fans who wouldn't otherwise be interested, I think is a good thing for the league. Where I have some issues is the execution. And like first and foremost, you're kind of sacrificing two good nights of hockey to put this one together, which that is what it is as long as the execution is fine and worth it. I don't love that it starts at 6 p.m. and well, obviously like the last game of the day can only be at like 11. uh, I'd like to see them do this outside of football season, do it on a weekend in like February, mid-February, after the Super Bowl is wrapped up, and start games at like 8 in the morning and have it go all the way up to well past midnight. Just put hockey on all day long. Like I think about it the way that college basketball kicks off their season, where they just have like this marathon
So
of
like
games.
24-hour, like
Yeah, like
nonstop.
do that. Find a way to do it in that way. And then you're gonna get these like degenerates or whatever, like these just people who are hungry for any sport. Like they'll take it at these weird hours, and maybe that turns them on to hockey. And for fans who are already existing, you get to watch hockey around the clock. Like that was the favorite part of the pandemic for me, was that games were put on at these weird ass times, and you got to sit down at like 11 in the morning and watch hockey until well past midnight every day, and it was awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think to your point, like it's the execution that is part of the issue. Like it feels just very forced, and like there's a lot of sports going on right now. So when bring a good point, like do it in February on like a Sunday when there's nothing really going on. And like, why does Red Zone work so well? It's because they own their own day, like, and there's multiple games kind of going on in different windows. Whereas like this is kind of just too like I know we love the staggered starts. Don't get me wrong, but also like NFL, they don't need every single team playing on this night too. Like they make it big, like 16 games, 32 teams. Like red zone still works when there's 24 teams, 26 teams playing.
Yeah, the red zone model is a little bit different too, because like when a team is in the red zone, like that they're on the precipice of something. Where like the only thing that's really applicable to with hockey is the power
Power
play,
play.
and
Yeah.
that's it. And like otherwise, you're just kind of like a clip show, which is essentially NHL Tonight on NHL Network, which is like
which is in 5 households, though, like, no one has
Right.
NHL Network.
Like, and yeah, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, it would be awesome to just put on a channel that just shows you the highlights from every game going on every single night. I wish that really existed and was more available to everybody. But it's just a different model. Like football, and like people watch Red Zone because they want to know who's scoring on their fantasy team, whereas like fantasy hockey doesn't have that sort of cultural impact either.
Exactly. It's more for, like, the big hockey fans and, like, if you're gonna start betting on the games, but if you wanna try and get the casual fan, I think your point makes more sense where it's just, like, a 24-hour, like, hockey all day, maybe do, like, the international series, so, like, games are in Europe so they can start
Yeah.
early, and then you got games, like, maybe a game in Hawaii, and then it, like, wraps up late at night, and it's just going all day.
Yeah. That's exactly what I want.
Awesome. Well, Pete, this has been great. We'll wrap up the episode here. We're gonna have the cool bet question. If you go to puckpedia.com/coolbet, you can get in on the action today. Stay cool, bet responsibly. Puckpedia.com/coolbet. We've been having our Stanley Cup picks with some of the guests that we've had on here. So Johnny Laz, I think he had picked Tampa over Dallas. We had Chris Powers from Empty Netters go Dallas over Tampa. I went Edmonton over Carolina. So Pete, just let's wrap it up. What is your Stanley Cup pick? Who's making it out of the East? Who's making it out of the West? And then who's winning the final in June?
Yeah, I feel like I've been on the Dallas train for like a few years at this point. I do think that like at some point they will break through that door that they're knocking on, but like it's so trendy that I'm gonna go in a different direction. I will say, I'll say Vegas. I really like some of the early returns on Vegas, and obviously they've made runs, they've won it, and like they're kind of tried and true. And they're just a team that is so strong up front and play such a quote unquote big boy style of hockey that, as long as as long as the goaltending situation can kind of hold together, I really like them.
Yeah, and like Vegas, to your point, like Mitch Marner has fit in seamlessly on that top power play unit first line. Pavel Dorofeyev's going to pot 60 goals this season, as long as they stay healthy on the back end. And then to like Carter Hart, like I know, I don't want to talk about this legal situation, but from a pure hockey standpoint, like he was a really strong goalie when he was playing. And I think if he can stabilize that goalie position and be a 1B to Aiden Hill's 1A, I think that they could be in a really good spot in the goaltending position.
Yeah, and it's just, it's that Western Conference is obviously a gauntlet, but like they've shown that they can hang tough for years at this point. And like Bruce Cassidy's a really good coach. Yeah, I just really like them, and it's it's gonna be fascinating to see who comes out of the West, because I feel like those teams are just gonna beat the hell out of each other, especially in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. But part of the reason that I'm rooting for Vegas too is like I think it'd just be so funny if Mitch Marner won a Stanley Cup in his first year after leaving Toronto. It'd just be the best.
It would be incredible cinema, which would be great for your show and great for all the content that we do in the hockey
Absolutely.
space. All right, then who you got coming out of the East?
East, the East is like more wide open. Like, you know what? Like, throw the Devils in there. Like,
Hell yeah.
obviously they've had an
Let's go.
incredible start, but like, I have some concerns about their depth. But like, that's this kind of stuff that you can address mid season, and like, I feel much more comfortable riding with a team based off of what they have on the front end of their lineup and then patching up the back end. And like I still do have outstanding concerns about Carolina and their game breakers, and like who can actually step up when they need one goal in that big moment in like an Eastern Conference final.
Not
Who
Svechnikov
turns the
right now.
tides? No, like he's been so quiet. Like you saw the momentum that he built at the last season, and you're like, all right, maybe he is stepping into that role. Maybe Seth Jarvis will step into that role. I don't know. But as of right now, I still have concerns about who that guy is who steps up and seizes a big moment. And I think that New Jersey has that guy.
Yeah, and as someone who's been to 3 out of the 4 Devils home games this year, it all depends on Jack Hughes' health, right? Like, he's the engine that goes on the Devils team, and if he stays healthy throughout the year, they've got as good a chance as anyone to make it through the East. His running mate, Jesper Bratt, is an insanely talented player who complements him so well, and they play so well together. And then you got Nico Hischier dominating right now. He's shutting down all the top lines of Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Macklin Celebrini, Austin Matthews. Timo Meyer's finally starting to put some points points and some goals on the board, which is what they expected when they traded for him. The goaltending too, like Jake Allen has been a rock solid back there when Jacob Markstrom was hurt. I think Markstrom's actually coming back tonight. And then on defense too, like they have such a plethora of right-handed defensemen, which is kind of a great thing to have, but it is a problem when they have too many of them. But you look at Dougie Hamilton, Simone Nemec has 7 points in 8 games, so he's a guy you
Luke
drafted.
Hughes has been great. Like it, Luke Jack's start has kind of overshadowed how good Luke has been, and like I've had my doubts and concerns when it comes to Luke Hughes, but like he's looked really good to start this year.
Yeah, no offense to Quinn, but he might be the third best Hughes brother, at least to start the season. I know we know Quinn will ramp it back up at some point, but right now those two.
Yeah, right.
But Pete, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. Good luck with the show and the rest of the season. You guys, everyone go subscribe to What Chaos. Follow Pete on Twitter and watch all the content that they do. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for having me.
PuckPedia.